I'm Christopher Wilkins, music director of the Akron Symphony, and this weekend we're performing music by Verdi and Wagner. Greatest hits, popular selections from the operas of both these great composers.
So why?
Well, Verdi and Wagner together represent the pinnacle of the high romantic age in music, and both were masters of drama. And over time, after Beethoven, in a way, the great statements were made in the opera houses. And this was music intended for the masses, for the general public. And so the fact that they've become enormously popular ever since show that they represent a certain kind of high watermark in that repertoire, and it's worth celebrating. They involve huge orchestras, and so the sound is opulent and exciting, and orchestras love to play it. Verdi and Wagner were both men of the theater, and so the music describes particular scenes and narratives and settings, and it's highly visual. So it's wonderful to be able to imagine the slaves of the great Va Pensiero of Verdi, or the moment along the Nile of the triumphal march from Aida, which ends the first half. And likewise for Wagner, you know, we can see the Rhine River and the Rhine maidens swimming in it, and we can observe the moment when Valhalla, the palace of the gods, catches fire and collapses in flames, and the music of the waters coming up to drown it. We can see all that happen, and in today's world, these visual cues in the sense of narrative and image are a beautiful way into the music. And I think audiences always respond when there is some imagistic connection they can make with what's happening, and there's no more visual music than this. So the question is, how does this work? How does this music operate emotionally to create such deep feelings in us? Both Verdi and Wagner work often with small musical motifs, short themes that represent something elemental. For example, the very opening of the concert, the three strokes of fate in The Force of Destiny for Verdi, or the sound of the anvils in the work song, in the anvil chorus. For Wagner, examples abound. There are images of nature, of forest or wind or water, or images of mystery and magic, or of force and battle and power, or certainly of love. And these little ideas get repeated over time, and they change over time to suggest how the course of the narrative is developing, or how characters are changing. They weren't only interested in presenting these ideas, that we could witness them as audience members from afar. They wanted these basic rhythmic and melodic ideas to get into our experience, to affect our emotions, stir up our spirit. That's what romantic music is really about. It's about energizing that feeling in the audience. For Verdi, a lot of it was about patriotism and ideas of freedom. For Wagner, it was very much about a whole worldview of life experience. You know, asking the question, what is it to be human? That's the essence of romantic music, and I think that's how it works. And the enormous orchestra lends that more color and more options in terms of painting those images, but also certainly simply more raw power. Well, I've mentioned that it's a huge orchestra, and the orchestra is unquestionably the focus of the Wagner. The Akron Symphony Chorus is present for most of the first half, for most of the Verdi, and among his most famous choruses. And their music director of choruses for the Akron Symphony, Marie Bucori-Calavan, will guest conduct. She'll conduct the majority of the pieces on the first half, which I'm very excited about. Marie's a thrilling musician and a really strong, impressive podium presence. She conducted for us last year, and it was marvelous. So I'm excited for that. And then we're doing actually the entire final scene of the fourth and final opera of the Ring cycle. So Wagner's Ring cycle ends with Valhalla bursting into flames, the Rhine River overflowing, drowning the flames. The ring itself is snatched by the Rhine maidens, the symbol of power, of magical authority in the world, is returned to the Rhine at the end. And all of this story is spoken by the heroine of the Ring operas, Brunhilde. So we have a young dramatic soprano who's one of the great young stars in America today, Elizabeth Rosenberg, to sing the role of Brunhilde. She was recommended to me by Jane Eaglin, who's one of the towering figures in 20th century opera, was the greatest Brunhilde of her day, quite recent days, at the Metropolitan Opera and all the top houses of Europe. Elizabeth has been studying the role with Jane, and Jane is really excited about Elizabeth's grasp of the material, the beauty and power of her voice, because the music requires both. The end is a lament, but it's also a love song. And that nuance and that lyricism and flexibility of the voice is how you get that softness and that sweetness. But as I've said, the orchestra is enormous, and Brunhilde famously requires tremendous power in the voice. And Elizabeth has both these qualities. So it's going to be an exciting night all around. The chorus, orchestra, and soloist will make a tremendous impact. Well, highlights of Verdi is not so unusual, but immensely popular. And we tend not to repeat things terribly often. I don't do the Beethoven Ninth every second or third year. I like to keep the great and famous and popular works fresh. So most of this repertoire we haven't done in some time. So that makes it an event. But where the Wagner is concerned, it's never been done before in this particular way, and never will be again. It's a unique compilation that I put together for this evening. We take excerpts from 3 of the 4 Ring operas, and we play them in sequence, but we're not doing a Ring without words, where in many cases vocal lines are played by instruments and that sort of thing. These, to me, are highlights from the Ring that show the orchestra to spectacular advantage, and moments that are especially vivid in terms of the drama, the narrative, the characters, and what's happening. We not only have Siegfried's Funeral March, for example, which is a famous orchestral excerpt. I've also added the moment when Siegfried is killed, just before then. And before that moment, I've included the very opening of Act 3, which has Siegfried's horn call. He's played on the French horn, a famous moment in orchestral music, and then the call of the clan of the opposition, which is played on something called a cow horn, or a horn to represent an old Norse instrument. So we have the conflict between the two clans. It's extraordinary music. The audience will know exactly what's going on. There's a sort of competitive quality to it leading up to the moment in which Hagen kills Siegfried, and probably only be heard then. So it's wonderful when a concert is also a unique and unrepeatable event. So I urge people to come and enjoy a really splendid night of orchestral and vocal music.